Hello, welcome to my channel, video, whatever. Um, this one's going to go a little bit darker than the previous two that I've done recently, mainly because the news has sort of been dark, as it were. Specifically, I'm thinking about the Colorado shooting that happened, and from what I've interpreted, it's basically a mentally ill person who shot up a supermarket. This has been all too common, as so many other people have stated in the news, media, blah, blah, blah. The reality is, this is nothing really new in terms of mental health. Let's be real. And this isn't anything new in terms of mental health. And the reason that it keeps happening is because nothing is done about that issue specifically. We didn't have so many shootings back in the 60s and 70s and really just a generation or two ago, because we had facilities and a safety net for people who were mentally ill to be put into a place where they can't be among so people who are mentally ill and people who are ethically ill, right? Morally corrupt as well as mentally corrupt have a similar status in society as being animalistic in nature in certain circumstances, right? Okay, so with mental illness, a person can become violent and harm other people because of their perceptions or misperceptions based on the fact that they have delusions or some kind of psychosis where they have even hallucinations, okay? With morally corrupt people, they have beliefs or perspectives that make their acts to them conscionable, meaning they can live with what they've done to such a degree, or to a point where they can kill other people or harm other people and not feel bad about it, or in fact would want to, because of a series of beliefs that they've constructed based on environmental factors, usually having to do with their own family or lack thereof. I mean, you can have a whole family of people surrounding you, but none of them actually give a fuck about you, or you can feel that way anyway. And ultimately, the resentment of your family for your family bleeds out into society. And because you can't harm your family, or don't, it's like, what, a person's much more reluctant to harm their father or mother or sister or brother than they are to harm a stranger who they have projected that hatred upon. And so the mental illness factor has been largely ignored because the liberal, sort of left-leaning side of the political spectrum would rather have people focusing on the tool, the instrument of anger, as opposed to the person wielding it. Namely, because the biggest tenet probably for a tyrannical form of government to be established is to take away any means for the public to defend themselves against their own government. This is purely a political thing, and any time that there's a shooting, of course, they use it as a platform to speak about the issue of reforming the Second Amendment to basically ignore the original intent, which was to defend ourselves from our own government and the tyranny that can form if we leave it unattended, which we have. And clearly the overall impact has been that these shootings become more frequent because we don't frequent our own government and we don't frequent our own society. We've gradually evolved into a society that is more and more isolated and more sort of dreadful, honestly, to live in. Primarily dreadful because of the fact that there isn't much humanity left in it anymore. There isn't like the previous video that I made about, you know, small acts of kindness because of uh, really the past since like the 90s. I mean, like if you look at it in terms of the first the first mass shooting, right, which was Columbine. Columbine was a situation where these kids in school, which is a microcosm of society, by the way. Schools are basically a microcosm of the greater culture and society. And it would have boded well for the culture, the society, the parents that were raising children after that event or that situation to really take that into consideration. But I don't think that they really did in any meaningful way. Um, it would have been much more constructive to have a very serious dialogue about what it is exactly we're doing. But the fact that that happened in a school setting, particularly, is telling. And so from there became this kind of suspicion or fear of other people and a generalized sense of dread about the future in terms of where the children are going and how they're being protected, and we have to keep them safe. We want a safe and orderly environment. And what this did is backfired and created a much more draconian style system for the students to grow up in. And then from there, because they've internalized it through the education system, a much more draconian and less humane, personable, and social environment that has ultimately led to a much more disconnected population. And so you have people like Joe Biden saying, you know, we have to just straight up strip everyone of their guns, you know, this extreme reaction to something which is typical of people who don't really have a clue about what the issues actually are. They just want to sort of do the final solution kind of approach and throw the baby out with the bathwater, essentially. That's really what that is. And because of the overall propaganda and because of the total lack of understanding about what propaganda is and the fact that PR, public relations, is propaganda. I mean, it's brilliant. It's the Edward Bernays, who invented propaganda. Maybe he didn't invent it, but he wrote the book on it. Okay, and so he invented PR. He definitely invented public relations, because public relations is a propaganda term to essentially dissuade people or to just like obfuscate the actual intent or meaning of the word or the practice of propaganda. He wrote books on public relations after he wrote the book Propaganda, admitting to the fact that essentially he had to rename it because of World War II and the Nazis. So he used propaganda to keep propagating the method of propaganda, if that makes any sense. It's kind of like almost like a double negative or something. But basically, PR has been used, public relations and propaganda has been used consistently from that time to try and convince the public that basically the average person is a potential threat to everyone else. And this has been gradually more and more sort of the case that this perspective has been pushed on the public until essentially the ultimate typification of this, the coronavirus outbreak, where everyone is a potential threat to your health. You have to be scared of everyone. And this doesn't bode well for society or for culture. What we really need more of is humanity, love, small acts of kindness, and a willingness to reach out to other people. Closing off the elderly from their families and loved ones is the exact opposite, and it is what has resulted in so many deaths in nursing homes and so forth, aside from just their being, at risk for illness already in general. But without love and without a reason to live, people will die far more rapidly than if they were to become infected with some kind of virus of any kind. And frankly, why would I want to live if I don't have any love and I don't have any relationships anymore? Human beings are animals of social character and need to have social contact. And if we strip people of their social element, take away all the means of protecting themselves from government, and divide them up into many, many different competing groups, you've divided the house and you've removed any means of protecting themselves. You've basically created the conditions for tyranny to establish itself fully. And this is what people don't understand. Joe Biden is a fucking dictator. He's trying to establish the situation that will allow for the government to be turned into a fucking dictatorship. Period. End of story. And this is what is desired by the ruling elite sort of class that he represents. I wanted this to be sort of a short video, so that's really all I wanted to say. Thank you. Love and appreciation, everybody. Peace.